Erişilebilir konut konusu yalnızca sabahtan beri aslında dinlediğimiz bütün panellerde de altı çizildiği gibi Türkiye'nin sorunu değil. Dünyada çok önemli bir sorun. Biraz böyle dünyadan rakamlar vermek istiyorum Serdar.
Tabii ki
E,
senin söylediğin gibi gerçekten de şu anda bütün toplumların, bütün ekonomilerin en önemli konusu. Avrupa'nın en gelişmiş ülkelerinde bile ekonomik modellerin değişmesiyle birlikte bunun ne kadar önemli olduğunu özellikle şu aralar çok net görüyoruz sevgili Elif.
Bugüne kadar hiç bu sorunları yaşamayan ülkeler bile bunu yaşamaya başladılar, öyle diyebiliriz. Birleşmiş Milletler'in UN Habitat'ın rakamları var. Dünyada 2030'a kadar hep böyle 2030'la ilgili rakamlar veriyoruz son dönemde. Yine 2030 aslında çok yakın bir zaman. Maalesef %40'ı dünya nüfusunun, yani 3 milyar insanın erişilebilir konuta ulaşma sorunu olacak. Türkiye özelindeki yüzde ne kadardır tam bilmiyorum ama aşağı yukarı bu oran Türkiye için de geçerli olabilir diye düşünüyoruz 2030'lu yıllarda. Geçtiğimiz aylarda bir toplantıda, bir basın toplantısında biz de aslında farklı bir modeli dinledik. GEODER Başkanı Mehmet Kalyoncu bizle paylaştı. Yeni konut modeli, erişilebilir konut modeli. Gerçekten de Türkiye için uygulanabilir boyutta işleri düşünmek ve bunların arkasından projeleri üretmek ihtiyacımız var. Çünkü zaman hızla akıyor. Çok da zaman kaybetmeden bu projeleri hayata geçirirsek en azından erişilebilir konut konusunda daha farklı bir Türkiye'ye doğru ilerleyebiliriz diye düşünüyorum.
Kesinlikle
Bu
öyle ve
konuda
söylediğin çok doğru sevgili Elif. Sevgili dostlar, Elif'in söylediği bu sorunu aşabilmenin tek yolu mevcut bildiğimiz formüllerin dışına çıkabilmek. Yeni modellere ihtiyacımız var. Yeni bir işletim sistemine sevgili Tim Coben'in söylediği gibi ihtiyacımız var ki anca o şekilde bu konuyu çözebileceğiz. Şimdi
yani
istersen
geleneksel modelin dışında bir model aslında hepimizin geleceği için çok değerli bir hale geldi artık.
harika. O zaman hemen gel bir sözü daha fazla uzatmayalım.
Aynen.
Konuyu uzmanlarına bırakalım. Değerli bir konuğumuz ve onun yöneteceği bir panel var. Ben müsaadelerinizle kendilerini davet etmek istiyorum. Doktor Levent Sümer, SMV Strateji kurucusu, Doris Andoni, Arnavutluk Maliye ve Ekonomi Bakanlığı Konut Dairesi Müdürü ve paneli modere etmek üzere GEODER Yönetim Kurulu Başkan Yardımcısı sevgili Ayla Heyfegil'i sahneye davet ediyorum. Buyurun efendim.
Herkese merhabalar. Çok güzel Serdar Bey izah etti aslında kimlerle burada bir aradayız. Sabahtan beri biraz felsefe konuştuk. Şehrimizi vicdanımızla nasıl tamamlayacağımızı konuştuk. Hemen arkasından öğleden sonra finansman konuştuk. Çok da değerli konuşmacılarımız var aralarda tabii ki. Şu anda özellikle konutta erişilebilirliği konuşmak istiyoruz. Çünkü bizden sonra da bu işte özellikle dönüşümde elini taşın altına koyan yatırımcılarımız konuşuyor olacaklar. Konutta erişilebilirliği konuşurken de iki değerli misafirim var. Doris Andoni'yi biraz önce Serdar Bey anons etti ama onun bir rolü daha var aslında. Birleşmiş Milletler Avrupa için Kentsel Gelişim, Konut ve Arazi Gelişimi Komisyon Başkanı, uzun bir titr, bakmadan okunamıyor birazcık ama aslında büyük ölçekte Avrupa Birliği'nin içerisindeki, yani Birleşmiş Milletler için Avrupa Birliği'nin içerisindeki bütün bu erişilebilir konutu da komisyonunun başında ve burada şeyler üretiyor, politikalar üretiyor. Levent Bey de tabii sadece bir hem eğitmen hem Boğaziçi Üniversitesi'nde okutman olarak değil, onun da ötesinde bugün bir kitabı var kendisinin, hemen dışarıda görebilirsiniz. Aslında büyük ölçekte erişilebilir konuta nasıl ulaşılabileceği ile ilgili çok önemli bazı tezi var, bazı bulguları var. Onu bizimle paylaşacak. Müsaadenizle şu andan itibaren İngilizceye dönmek istiyorum. Misafirimin şeyi için de daha rahat şey yapabilmesi için. Doris, welcome. I just did the introduction of your positions, but today we would like to hear your experiences, especially on the policy making, on the affordable housing. What challenges you have faced and you're still working on?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, being here. And I would like also to express my deep appreciation to the people of Turkey and also to the government of Turkey for their support in overcoming the same situation that you had with the earthquake by providing a number of houses. So thank you very much for that. Today we heard about consciousness of architects, consciousness of urban planners, of developers, of financial institutions and banks. And I think that we are missing a small piece of puzzle, which is consciousness of policies and regulations, so government policies and regulations. And I am an architect by profession, but I'm not going to speak as an architect. Today I am an independent consultant, but I am going to speak as a former director of housing in the Ministry of Finance of Albania and as a former chair of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Land Management, which I chaired until October. United Nations Economic Commission for Europe is one of the 5 regional commissions of United Nations that cover, that includes 56 member states, from Canada, United States, Europe, up to Central Asia, and Turkey is also part and member states of this committee. We have countries from the most wealthy countries in this region to the poorest one. So there is a big diversity between member states of United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, but what is common for them is problems they are facing with problems and crises of affordability, housing affordability. Well, housing affordability is a function of problems that rise from demand, from supply, and both of them, they are influenced by policies and regulations. But what makes it a crisis nowadays? What has caused this? First, the fact that incomes are too low compared with housing prices. This has its own reasons why. It is getting worse even because of inflation that it was spoken today, this morning also, and also talking to Turkish colleagues, they mentioned the high inflation that is also in Turkey. It's everywhere. I mean, in our region at least, all are facing this big problem of high inflation. Doesn't depend if you are next to war in Ukraine or you are far. Globalization make it possible to spread effects everywhere immediately. So war in Ukraine has influenced the increase of prices in the market of materials, and also this has done, I mean, COVID-19 is also an effect on income. On the other side, we have the supply factors. And as I mentioned, the prices has been skyrocketed everywhere in big cities and in touristic areas. In Tirana, for example, we are witnessing a tremendous increase of prices of apartments in the market. Why this increase of the prices? I again will connect it with the war in Ukraine and the increase of prices of materials. But on the other side, developers, they are targeting, they are not targeting low-income and medium-income families. Why it is so? Because I think, and based also on different reports, especially from the United Nations Special Rapporteur on adequate housing, that there is the aspect of housing as a human right has been overlooked, while the aspect of housing as a commodity and as a financial asset has been taken more power and more importance. So this has created, and in general, the way how the global economy is developed these 30 years has influenced in polarization of societies. Nowadays, the wealth is concentrated in a small percentage of population, while the medium income strata is almost disappearing. And this is also happening not only in those developing countries, but also in those countries that used to have a very flat middle income society. And finally, the third factor which influences both is policies and regulations. So taxes it was mentioned in the previous panel that lowering taxes can make it easier to afford and to lower the prices. There are different policies, and we can mention that in the second round, but also regulations, planning regulations, zoning can strict also. Some European countries, for example, they are facing with big constraints in housing supply because they have strong regulations to preserve the historical cities, and this makes it very difficult to, for new investments. Not to forget the fact that housing and in general the construction sector is ideal for money laundering that distort the market, and also the fact that despite the digitalization and the information technology for applying for building permits and also for e-governance for procurement and tenders, there is still bureaucracy and corruption, which also undermine the investments and affordability of housing. So these are some more or less factors that are general in most of the countries, member states of UNECE, but also they are evidenced in my country, in Albania, because we are not excluded from this, what is happening in global and regional level.
Very interesting. We thought these are our own problems, but now you say that this is, especially in your position, in former position, this is the problem of all Europe, maybe the whole world right now.
Yeah.
So I'll just pass to Levent Bey. The main reasons for housing affordability and crisis, and I think what we should be talking about is that how long will that last? And will it turn into an economical crisis? Just from coming from the housing crisis, are we going to have a bigger one?
Well, unfortunately, the immediate answer is yes. Why? Because remember 15 years ago when we experienced the global financial crisis that was caused by the mortgage crisis in the United States, there was a big debt problem. And the secondary mortgages was, actually crap. So the investors lost a lot of money and many people became, unfortunately, homeless. At that time, we had around $175 trillion of debt in the world. The total debt was about 2.3 times of the total GDP of the world. But today, the total GDP is $100 trillion, but the total debt of the world is $307 trillion, according to IMF. So the debt is increasing very incrementally. So we are actually, the companies, the people, the governments are spending the money they actually don't have, because everything is based on debt. So that's a very recent news from China's Evergrande. Maybe some of you guys know about the case of Chinese housing crisis. I can name it as a crisis. 2 years ago, when the pandemic was actually one of our main topic, they declared actually, I mean, they did not declare, they said that they were in a default, but they just tried to survive somehow. But a few weeks ago, they declared a bankruptcy protection in the United States with 340 billion US dollars, which is about 35% of the total GDP of Turkey. Besides, in China, we also face one of the largest, again, the Ocean Green, Country Green, the name of the company, one of the largest giants of real estate in China. They declared $6.7 billion of loss for the first half of 2023. It is the east side of the world, so China is struggling with high debt. The west side, and we compare the United States, and we include Turkey and also the Europe, is struggling with the high prices, high inflation rates. In China, we are discussing about deflation because of the low demand. There is a huge amount of construction which is ongoing projects. So those projects are still not completed, and one of the biggest problems of the Chinese citizens is that they are in a position that they are not going to get their house. Because they are paying their mortgages, but they have the problem of they are not going to get it because those giants are in bad situation. The problem in China is different, but the problem in western part, including Turkey, is different because we are struggling with high prices. There's another news that's stating that Europe's housing crisis, especially Portugal, Turkey, and Luxembourg, struggles to find solutions, and we are actually here to find solutions. Another data that I would like to share with you is, despite the high housing prices, we are experiencing some sort of decline in western parts, especially in Germany, Sweden. But again, in eastern part of Europe, the housing prices are still going up. And Turkey is also included in the countries that the housing prices are still going up. But there is one exception that I would like to mention, that after July 2023, the Turkish housing prices, the increase in the Turkish housing prices, lost its hedging ability against the inflation. That means that people are not going to be thinking of considering housing as an investment, because we actually should not even think about housing as an investment. So it's that the problem starts from that point. Another news that comes from Goldman Sachs, they say that we are experiencing a worse scenario than we experienced 15, 16 years ago in the mortgage crisis in 2008. You remember Lehman Brothers in September 15 was collapsed with a high, debt. So we are actually in a position that in a worse position. Why? I am just going to show two figures. The one that you saw on the screen now is the housing prices to income ratio in the United States, which is now larger, bigger than as it used to be in 2008. And the same figure is again in the UK. The housing price to income ratio is worse than it used to be in 2008. So now we are in a worse situation than we used to be in 2008. There's some sort of exceptions, of course. The mortgage crisis that initiated in the United States was because of the loans that provided to mortgage owners without making a good investigation. Today we have different sort of problem, and we are actually in a global sense experiencing a high inflationary period similar to 1970s, because that was actually the high inflationary period caused by the oil crisis. And now we are running to an oil crisis. We experienced one in 2020 in the first and second quarters because of the war between the Ukraine and Russia. Now we are actually going fast forward to another, maybe a larger war, unfortunately, which may eventually increase the risk of the global economy. So a few more figures that why we are experiencing a worse scenario compared to 2008, which can turn out to be a global financial crisis. the total homeless people, the number of the total homeless people is around 150 million all around the world. But among 8 billion population in the world, 1.6 billion people are living in a place that we cannot like name house. Yes, it is a shelter, but of course it has very lack of many like technical, mechanical, electrical, and all other facilities that a house shall have. And one another topic that I'm going to open, but I just want to stop here because there's going to be another issue that I want to underline how we can resolve the problem.
I think we have to start from you now because the whole scenario was too black.
Yeah.
And let's suggest some ways that new policy recommendations to overcome the affordable housing crisis, because we are here to find solutions as well. So even though the future is not as pink or even as bright as we may think, but what is your suggestion?
Well, thank you. Actually, I don't like being pessimistic. I'm always like looking from the like filled part of the glass, not the empty part. The world, yes, has too much debt, but we have money. We have money in pension funds, $66 trillion all around the world. We have money in sovereign wealth funds, around $10, $11 trillion. We have money in insurance funds. So you see the screen that the top countries, the top funds, with the size of the funds. So we have that money can be invested to resolve our problems, not only the housing, but also the whole financing problem of the project finance. We can include the corporate finance. So we have the money, but we need to use that money for the sake of people, for the sake of the, our future generations. For example, in Turkey, we have also money. Tevfik Bey mentioned the figures of the total money accumulated in the pension funds, which is around more than 700 billion Turkish lira, which is not bad. But when we compare it with the total GDP of Turkey, it's around 3–4% of the total GDP, which is far behind the average of OECD countries, which is around 50–60%. So in Turkey, people are making savings, but not in the actually context of in saving accounts, pension funds. Maybe they put it in the banks, or they use it like they purchase gold or somewhere else. The money is stored. But we need to find a solution that money is going to be used for the sake of people. So I actually developed a model, and I said that if we would like to resolve the situation, resolve the problem now, we need to make a cooperation among public, among private sector, and also the people shall be included into the system. So the figure that you see on the screen, we can establish a housing fund, which can be a real estate investment fund, and the developers and investors can invest or can sell those units to the housing fund. And as a home purchaser, a person who would like to purchase a house, I'm not going to go and ask for a bank loan. I don't actually think that decreasing the interest rates is a solution. It is a temporary solution which is eventually increasing the housing prices, which is making the scenario worse. So I am telling that to that fund, I am forwarding our savings. It could be 10% of the total sales price of the house. It could be 20%, whatever your saving is, through the pension fund or directly, and become the shareholder of that fund. And then you start living inside that house as a person who is renting it, but you will be paying the rental fee of, let's say, 80%, because you are the shareholder of 20% of that fund. By the time passes, you make contribution through the pension fund, and the government has incentive in Turkey at 30%, which is not bad. So it's also helping you to finance the house through the fund. And it is like combination of a real estate investment fund, diminishing partnership, and also a pension fund ecosystem. So we need to use the word ecosystem a lot. So we need the departments, the institutions shall create a synergy by making an ecosystem. And also, we need to also underline the word, today I heard it a few times and I really liked it, we need to have a paradigm change. We need to have a mindset shift from the conventional approach to sustainable approaches. So, for the last words, I can make some sort of policy recommendations, which is like a summary of the model. We need to use the money of people to finance the needs of the people. We need to use asset-backed capital market instruments instead of debt instruments. We need to use pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, insurance funds as the primary source of financing, but banking as a secondary. Instead of increasing the mortgage loans, we should focus on sharing and partnership ecosystem and co-ownership and cooperation approach. And final word that I would like to say, we need to make sure that the real estate capital market instruments, the real estate investment fund, the real estate investment trust, real estate certificate, lease certificate, which we call sukuk, they should talk to each other, they should invest to each other, and create a synergy and an ecosystem of real estate, which is going to provide a solution to the problems of not only the Turkish housing problems, but also global crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm really happy to hear that your theory is very similar to what Gyoder is working on with the new affordable housing model, because we had a very similar way of looking into this problem and very similar solution to this problem. The only thing that we also asked is that majority of the lands today is managed by the government. So, and land is a very important issue in the overall concept of having affordable housing. So we are also trying to make sure that if the land is more affordable or given free to the investors, it is much easier to put together the whole fund system, much easier to put together a system which is affordable to the end user.
Yeah, it's a great model though, and in Turkey, the land cost is the main cost of the construction. It's more than half of the construction cost, and in some places even 70–80% in Bağdat Street or some other places. So we need to find a solution to decrease, minimize the land cost, and also find a solution for financing of the construction, as well as for the financing of the homeowners, instead of mortgage loans, which actually the capital market instruments and the pension funds will be the main source of financing.
Thank you very much. And Doris, coming back to you. So what is your suggestions on the policy changes? What do you suggest us to look into in more depth?
I mentioned before that our region is very diverse, but they share the same problem with the housing affordability crisis. However, when it comes to the approach from the point of view of UNECE region, there is a big diversity of approaches. It is difficult to find two similar policies or policy instruments, even in countries, cluster countries that share same history, like Nordic countries, for example. They have completely different approaches to housing. And this is something related with the history and with the way how housing has been developed. It says that housing is very path dependent, so it's very difficult to change the way how the housing policy has been and housing regime in more general has been established. Housing regime include not only policies but also the private market, the individual housing, the way how housing is provided. So, and that's why it is difficult to make a generalization of the approaches and give that in a certain context. With United Nations, we have worked a lot on affordable housing, and this is one of the reports that was published in last year. It's about housing, effective housing policies for affordable housing in UNECE region. It addresses 4 topics that were mentioned also by a previous presentation here: governance, finance, land, and also environment. And there are some key messages, and as policymakers message is that housing has to become a priority. So if housing is left behind somewhere, addressed sporadically and spontaneously, then we cannot speak of sustainable and durable way of developing it. So it needs to become a priority of governmental policies. And also understand better the drivers of unaffordability. Yeah, in general, we can say that there are problems with supply and with demand, but we have to go deep in the roots of these problems, where and why they are. And there should be a willingness also to demonstrate which are these problems, where do they stand. Housing affordability is not a problem of only housing as such, but of other policies that influence the housing affordability, like welfare policies or a tax system and fiscal, in general, fiscal system. So there are many other pieces of policies that can influence on that. So can I, or it is, thank you. Yeah, okay. In Albania, for example, we follow an approach which is affordable housing continuum, which means that we cannot pretend to change immediately the quality of life of people, so bringing them from the shacks to the high quality housing. So we have to follow a very constant and improving gradually the living conditions of those that are living in poor conditions. And we start from those completely non-market programs like temporary housing that also were exposed and presented today as a solution for evicted people or for those that have been facing with eviction due to war or to natural disasters, and going gradually. This is something that perhaps you cannot see well in this big screen. I like to present these images because they show how informal settlements has been developed in Albania. Perhaps I have put some timing, and that's why it is going by itself. This is something very similar with what has happened here in Istanbul, and I am reading also a novel of Orhan Pamuk that explains so in a very natural way the way how Istanbul was developed. And when I read that novel, I think how Tirana has been developed and how the peripheries of the cities. This has been one of the most affordable way of providing a home, because to have a house you need land and finance. So these people, they just found the land empty at the moment because it was rural land. They went to migration, they saved some money, they came back, they constructed, and nowadays, this is not nowadays, this is 2007, but nowadays you can see now very good standard of informal housing. And there now is local governments has entered with the infrastructure and improvement of the environment in general. So this is to say that this has been a very important policy that was followed, the legalization of informal settlements. And that enables the citizens and those that have provided house informal, the legalization enables them to use the house not just for housing, but also as an asset for taking some loan or to exchange, to sell, and so on. We also have developed a social housing program, because when we speak about affordable housing, we should keep in mind that some years ago, affordable housing and social housing was something different. Affordable housing was mostly understood as for ownership, while social housing something separate. Nowadays, when we mention affordable housing, we refer both to rental and to ownership housing. And this has been a project that was implemented through a partnership between national government, local government, and loan from the bank, and the private sector that provided for development and for projects. So it's a good example, but as I mentioned, we don't have a history of social housing in Albania. We privatized everything in the 90s, and we became a nation of homeowners. And now we find it difficult to absorb and to accept social housing, not just as a concept of social housing, so that someone is living in social housing, but also for the sake of costs that it is embedded in management and maintenance of good quality social housing. Finally, these are some examples of low-cost and energy-efficient housing. Low-cost is referred mostly to affordable housing that is developed by National Housing Agency, which is very much like perhaps Turkey in your case, but much smaller and with much smaller financial capacities. We are looking how to extend its role to include it also in social housing provision with partnership, always partnership with local government. And this is one of my messages, that local government should become a strong player in housing, because housing is very much related with their function. They are very directly linked with community. They know very well problems and preferences of the communities. And this is another way how we implement affordable housing schemes, through affordable loans. And perhaps we don't agree in this part, or you don't agree with this part, because this is subsidized loans. We started this in 2009, and it has generated a lot of interest from the families, because we love to be owners of our homes, and this is very much helpful for the families. It is not just subsidizing the interest, but also is competing between banks to lower their interest rate. So we had for some times, until the war in Ukraine, that was reflected with inflation, with higher interest rates, we didn't finance the project, because it was under the interest rate went down the ceiling that we have provided. So there are different, and I think that housing policy should have a variety of instruments to address different kind of housing need and housing demand, and enabling them.
Thank you very much for the insights. When I listened to you, I realized that we have been through in some of the stages that you are now going through, especially with the government subsidies on the interest rates, which we have TOKİ and Emlak Konut, which really helped people to buy houses by making arrangements with the banks. But I think for us, it is slightly a step further, or maybe even 2 steps further, because the country is too big, and the need is very big, especially because of the earthquake, because of the things that we have faced in February, and which we want to redo our city, Istanbul, for the future. Thank you very much for coming, and I think the next panel, which is very important, because they'll talk about how we are going to do the whole changes in Istanbul, and the way that the investors are looking into this subject. Thank you. Thank you.